I held the drive in my palm, rain tapping on the windshield, and suddenly I was no longer a widow cleaning out a car. I was a woman standing at the edge of a truth I never saw coming, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it was. I didn't plug it in right away. I just stood there in the kitchen staring at the USB drive like it might explode if I touched it wrong. The letter N on the label was smudged, probably written in a rush. It wasn't Michael's handwriting. That was the first thing I noticed. His penmanship was always precise, like every letter marched in formation. This was rushed, personal. A name, maybe. The house felt emptier than usual that afternoon, the drizzle outside turning into a steady patter that drummed against the roof like impatient fingers. I carried the drive upstairs to the study, Michael's study, though I'd avoided calling it that since he died. The room still smelled like him, faint traces of his aftershave mixed with the musty pages of legal books. Books on immigration law lined the shelves. A framed certificate from a refugee organization hung above the desk. That had always been his passion, helping displaced people find legal footing. He never talked about the details, just said, "I'm doing some good," and changed the subject. The screen lit up as I opened the laptop. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I imagined putting the drive away, pretending I never found it, but the moment had passed. The USB slid into the port with a click too loud in the quiet house. A folder appeared. No name, just a plain yellow icon. I opened it. Inside were dozens of files, letters, photos, PDFs labeled with codes and numbers I didn't recognize. I clicked on the first document, and the words blinked into view. "Dear Michael, thank you again for agreeing to help. I honestly don't know what I would have done without you. Marina." I froze. Marina, that name didn't belong to my life. It didn't belong to Michael's either, or at least not the part of him I'd known. My stomach tightened. I opened another file. I'm so scared. Eli's fever hasn't gone down for days. I know I said I wouldn't ask again, but if you can help with the clinic. Another, Eli asked about you again. He keeps saying he wants to fly kites like last time. He misses you, and I do too. My mouth went dry. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to keep going. Photos came next. A woman with deep brown eyes and tired cheeks. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, light hair, warm smile. In some pictures, they stood alone. In others, Michael was with them, arms draped around them, laughing, smiling the way he used to smile with us. I backed away from the desk like it might burn me. My knees nearly gave out. I clutched the edge of the chair, breathing hard. Who was Marina? Who was the boy? Who had Michael been? Really? The rain outside intensified, sheets of it blurring the window, mirroring the haze in my mind. I hadn't noticed how much time had passed until the light in the room dimmed, the gray afternoon slipping toward evening. My tea, forgotten on the desk, had gone stone cold. Part of me wanted to delete everything, to erase this digital ghost before it could haunt me further. But another part, a stubborn, aching curiosity, refused. This was Michael's secret world, tucked away in a car I was about to sell off like scrap. How many Sundays had he spent washing this very vehicle, all while hiding pieces of himself inside? I scrolled through more files, my heart pounding with each click. There were scanned receipts for medical bills, notes about school supplies, even a birthday card draft that read like something from a father to a son. Eli. The name echoed in my thoughts, a small word carrying immense weight. He looked so much like Lily at that age, curious eyes, that same tilt of the head when smiling. But he wasn't ours. He was theirs. Marina's and Michael's. The betrayal settled in slowly, not as a storm but as a rising tide, drowning the memories I'd clung to. Our vacations, our quiet evenings, the way he'd kiss my forehead before bed, all tainted now by this hidden layer. I closed the laptop with trembling hands, the USB still plugged in like a ticking bomb. Downstairs, the kitchen clock ticked onward, indifferent to the fracture in my world. Lily would be home soon from her after-school club, and I had no idea how to face her with this knowledge burning inside me. Would I tell her? Could I? As the evening shadows lengthened, I sat in the darkening study, the USB drive now in my pocket like a talisman of doubt. The initial shock had given way to a numb resolve. I needed answers, patterns, anything to make sense of this. But deep down, I knew this discovery was only the beginning, a thread that, once pulled, might unravel everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the man whose absence already ached like a missing limb. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the rain whispering against the windows like it was trying to say something I couldn't quite hear. My mind ran in circles, names, dates, letters, the image of Michael's arms around that boy. The way he looked at him, the way he used to look at Lily. At dawn I got up, made coffee, and went back to the study. I opened the folder again, slower this time, letting the reality settle. The files weren't random. The letters from Marina stretched across years, some tender, others practical, but one thing was consistent. The boy, Eli, his name came up in every message. I stared at the address for a long time. The last time I'd been to that part of the city, Lily was still in braces. We'd gone to an art exhibit near Columbia City, and Michael had insisted on taking the long way home to avoid traffic. Now I realized maybe he hadn't been avoiding traffic at all. The coffee grew lukewarm as I sat there, the morning light sharpening the edges of the room. My fingers traced the screen, zooming in on the lease details. Rent amounts, utility notes, even a handwritten addendum about a pet deposit. No pets mentioned in the letters, but perhaps Eli had wanted a dog. Or maybe it was just another layer of normalcy in this hidden life. Deeper into the folder I found voice memos. Short clips Michael had recorded, his voice low and hurried, as if speaking from a parked car or an empty office. In one, he murmured about a doctor's appointment for Eli, worry threading through his words like a vein. "The fever's back," he said, "and Marina's exhausted. I'll cover the specialist." Another was lighter. "He drew this picture today, of us flying kites. God, Emma, if you could see it." He caught himself, the recording clicking off mid-sentence. Hearing his voice again was like a fresh cut, raw and unexpected. It humanized the betrayal, turning abstract files into echoes of a man I knew, the caring one, the compassionate one, who had somehow extended that to them without telling me. By noon, the house was still quiet. Lily hadn't emerged, her door a silent accusation. I avoided knocking, instead delving further into the USB's depths. There were calendar invites disguised as work events, but the descriptions hinted at visits. Consultation, MV, with times that matched days he'd come home late, smelling faintly of unfamiliar soap. Photos from birthdays showed Eli blowing out candles, Michael in the background clapping, his smile wide but eyes guarded. One image captured them at a park, kites soaring against a windy sky, the same activity mentioned in the letters. The boy's light hair ruffled, his laugh frozen in time, so similar to Lily's childhood snapshots that it twisted something inside me. The shattering of our marriage wasn't just about the affair. It was the secrecy that clawed deepest, rewriting years of trust into a narrative of omission. How many times had he kissed me goodbye in the morning, only to detour to another world? Our shared mornings over coffee, our family trips, had they been shadowed by guilt he never showed? I closed my eyes against the sting, but the images persisted, each one a brick in the wall of doubt. Afternoon brought a brief respite when I stepped away to make lunch, the ritual grounding me momentarily. The kitchen filled with the aroma of grilled vegetables and toast, but I ate mechanically, my mind elsewhere. Back in the study, I uncovered encrypted notes, simple passwords I'd guessed from our anniversaries, detailing legal aid Michael provided Marina. Immigration forms, visa applications, all bearing his signature as sponsor. His passion for refugee work, which I'd admired as altruistic, now revealed a personal stake. Eli's birth certificate scan listed no father, but a later amendment hinted at paternity tests, dates aligning with a cold period in our marriage 8 years ago, when arguments had driven us to separate beds. The emotional weight pressed heavier as evening approached, the rain easing into a fine mist that fogged the windows. I compiled a mental timeline, the affair brief, perhaps, but the aftermath enduring. Marina's letters evolved from desperate pleas to grateful updates, painting Michael as a distant but devoted figure. Eli's first steps, one read, "Wish you were here." My heart ached, not just for the deception, but for the boy caught in it, innocent and unaware. Lily's footsteps finally echoed downstairs, but she grabbed a snack and retreated without a word, the tension between us thick as unsaid accusations. Alone again, I sifted through final files. Holiday cards never sent, sketches Eli drew for Papa Mike. The nickname landed like a punch, Papa. The role he'd cherished with Lily, now duplicated in shadow. Our marriage, once a foundation, felt like sand slipping through fingers, shattered not by absence but by the revelation of multiplicity. As night fell, I ejected the USB, its weight in my hand, a symbol of fractured reality. The understanding I'd sought only deepened the wound, leaving me adrift in a sea of what-ifs. Tomorrow, I'd trace the address, seek visual confirmation, but tonight, the secrets loomed large, eroding the man I'd mourned into someone stranger, more complex, and infinitely more painful to love. The next morning dawned with a heaviness that clung to the air, the rain from the night before leaving the world outside slick and muted, as if even the city mourned in quiet sympathy. I didn't rush to the address I'd uncovered. Not yet. My thoughts were tangled with Lily, her accusation from the evening still ringing like an echo I couldn't silence. I needed to bridge the chasm opening between us before it widened beyond crossing. Down in the kitchen, I brewed fresh coffee, the rich scent filling the space, a small anchor against the storm brewing inside. The counter was cluttered with untouched dishes, remnants of meals that tasted like ash these days. I poured 2 mugs, one for me, one with extra sugar the way she liked it, hoping a peace offering might soften the edges of our words. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, slower than usual, and then she was there, hair tousled from restless sleep, eyes narrowed with a mix of hurt and defiance. She paused at the threshold, glancing at the USB I'd left on the table like a careless confession. "Mom," she said, her voice tight, I couldn't just ignore it. "I read everything last night, sneaked into the study while you were in bed. The pictures, the letters, all of it." Her words landed heavy, confirmation of what I'd suspected when I'd heard faint movements in the hall hours earlier. I nodded, the mug warm against my fingers, but inside a cold dread uncoiled. "I didn't go looking for this," I said softly. "I just wanted to clean out the car. That's all. Is it true?" Her voice rose, cracking on the edge of anger. "Did he have another family?" My throat constricted, the truth bitter as I weighed how much to reveal. "I don't know if it was a family, Lily. I don't know what it was." She shook her head, stepping forward with fists clenched. "Don't lie to me. Not now." The air between us crackled, charged with the raw energy of unspoken grief that had festered since the funeral. I reached out, but she pulled back, her eyes brimming. "You always hated how close I was to him," she accused. "You were always so disappointed in everything. In me, in him. And now that he's gone, you're digging through his secrets like it proves you were right all along." "That's not fair," I whispered, the words catching as memories surged unbidden. Lily at 10, perched on Michael's shoulders during a summer festival, her laughter bright against the fireworks. The 3 of us huddled under blankets during movie nights, popcorn spilling everywhere. Those were the moments that defined us, not this shadow. But she saw only the invasion now, my curiosity, as a betrayal of his memory. "You're unbelievable," she continued, voice trembling. "You kept reading, didn't you? You didn't stop." "No," I admitted, my voice low. "I didn't." She swallowed hard, tears gathering like the mist outside. "I hate this. I hate that he's not here to explain. I hate that I don't know who he was. And I hate you for showing me." The slap of her words stung deeper than I anticipated, reopening the wound of our shared loss. I stood there, the coffee forgotten, as she paced the room, her movements jerky and uncontrolled. "Do you even care what this does to me?" she demanded. "He was my dad, the one who taught me to tie knots for camping trips, who stayed up with me during thunderstorms, telling me how lightning was just nature's way of resetting. And now there's this boy, Eli, who looks just like him in those photos. Like Dad had a whole other life, and we were the backup." Her voice broke, and for a moment the anger gave way to pure sorrow, her shoulders slumping as if the weight were too much for her young frame. I wanted to pull her close, to wrap her in the comfort we'd lost, but the divide felt too vast. "Lily, this hurts me too," I said, my own eyes stinging. "I'm not trying to tear him down. I'm trying to understand why he hid this, why our family wasn't enough." But the words sounded hollow even to me, defenses against the tide of her pain. She crossed her arms, jaw tight, the silence stretching taut between us. "You say that, but you're the one who kept poking," she retorted. "If you hadn't found that drive, we'd still have our memories intact. Now everything's poisoned." I thought about the years of small silences in our marriage, the times Michael seemed distant, lost in thoughts he wouldn't share. Nights when he'd stare at the ceiling, his hand absent-mindedly tracing patterns on the sheet. The argument spiraled, voices rising and falling like the uneven rhythm of the rain starting up again outside. She flung accusations like arrows, that I'd always been too controlling, too quick to judge his late hours at work, that my grief was selfish, focused on finances, while she mourned the hero she'd idolized. I countered with my own hurts, the isolation of widowhood, the burden of bills he left behind, the shock of discovering his divided heart. But beneath it all lay the unspoken grief, the aneurysm that stole him without warning, leaving us to piece together a puzzle with missing edges. Why couldn't he tell us? She cried at one point, sinking into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Was I not enough? Was our family a lie? The rawness of her questions mirrored my own, amplifying the tension until the room felt too small to contain it. I knelt beside her, hesitating before placing a hand on her back, but she shrugged it off. I need space, she muttered finally, standing abruptly. I'm going to Grandma's. Lily, no please, let's talk more. But she was already moving, disappearing up the stairs with purposeful strides. I heard drawers opening, bags being filled, the zippers rasped like a final punctuation. 10 minutes later, the door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the empty house like a heartbeat skipping. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, holding the now cold mug, staring at the spot where she'd been, wondering how many pieces a heart could break into before it stopped trying to hold anything at all. The kitchen window framed the driveway, rain streaking the glass and rivulets that blurred the world beyond. In that moment, the accusations hung heavy, mingling with the grief we'd both buried under anger. Lily's departure wasn't just flight. It was a manifestation of the fracture Michael's secrets had wrought, turning our shared mourning into solitary battles. I sank into a chair, the silence oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. How had we come to this? Mother and daughter, allies in loss, now divided by the ghost of a man we'd both loved differently. As the afternoon wore on, the house grew colder, the gray light filtering through clouds that promised more rain. I replayed our words, the raw edges of her pain cutting anew. In her eyes, I was the intruder, desecrating her father's legacy. In mine, she was the child I couldn't protect from the truth. Unspoken between us was the deeper grief, the what-ifs of a life where Michael had lived long enough to confess, to mend. Perhaps then, the accusations wouldn't sting so fiercely, the tensions wouldn't escalate to this breaking point. But he was gone, and we were left with fragments, letters, photos, and a void where trust used to be. By evening, a text from my mother-in-law confirmed, "She's here. Safe. Give her space." I set the phone down, the screen's glow fading, and let the solitude envelop me. The clash had stripped away pretenses, laying bare the accusations and grief we'd harbored. Tomorrow, with Lily gone, I'd follow the address, seek some tangible thread in this unraveling tapestry. But tonight the house whispered of absences, Michael's, Lily's, and the unspoken sorrow that bound us even in separation, a fragile hope that time might heal what words had wounded. One entry caught my eye. A larger sum 2 years ago, labeled as medical emergency, coinciding with a letter on the USB about Eli's fever spiking dangerously. I cross-referenced dates, my pen scribbling notes in the margins, piecing together a timeline that overlapped with our own family's milestones. That summer, we'd vacationed in Cannon Beach. Michael had excused himself for work calls more than once. Now I wondered if those were check-ins with Marina, assurances wired across the city. The rental agreement's address loomed largest, a modest complex in South Seattle's Rainier Valley, tucked between everyday landmarks like a taqueria and a laundromat. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. With Lily at her grandmother's, the note I'd left yesterday sat untouched on the counter, a relic of my earlier hesitation. It took me 40 minutes to reach the address, the GPS chiming softly as I pulled up across the street. The building had peeling paint and a rusted bike rack out front, but the small garden near the entrance was well kept. Lavender and sage growing in narrow rows, their scents faint even from a distance. I parked and stayed in the car, engine off, the windows fogging slightly from my breath. I didn't know what I expected to see, but I saw them before I was ready. A woman stepping out of the building, grocery bags in hand, long dark hair tied back. Behind her, a boy with a backpack bounding down the stairs, talking too fast for her to keep up. She laughed, I didn't need confirmation. It was them. She was Marina, and that boy was Eli. The resemblance haunted me, not just physical, but in gestures. The way Eli tilted his head when listening, a mirror of Michael's during our late-night talks. From the photos on the USB I'd known, but seeing it in motion, alive and breathing, made it visceral. This boy carried Michael's legacy in his veins, a secret extension of the man who'd built sandcastles with Lily on that Cannon Beach trip. How many times had Michael visited here, parked in this very spot, watching them with the affection he'd shown us? The thought sparked a fresh wave of betrayal, mingled with an unwelcome pity. For Marina, raising a child alone in this modest place. For Eli, oblivious to the complexities shadowing his life. Minutes stretched as I lingered, the mist turning to light rain that dotted the windshield like tears. A few residents came and went, an elderly man with a walker, a young couple laughing under a shared umbrella, but no sign of them returning. I imagined their day. Eli at school, perhaps chattering about science projects like the ones mentioned in the letters. Marina at work, whatever job sustained them beyond Michael's transfers. The financial trail I'd traced suddenly felt less like evidence, and more like a lifeline he'd extended, quiet acts of atonement woven into our shared budget. Had I missed signs? The occasional unexplained expense, brushed off as work-related? The guilt gnawed, self-directed now, for not seeing the cracks sooner. By the time I started the engine, the sky had turned a deeper gray, and the house would feel colder than I remembered upon return. I drove back slowly, taking side streets to avoid the rush, my mind replaying the scene in loops. Eli's smile, so unguarded, Marina's laugh, warm despite the burdens she carried. They weren't villains in some story, they were people, flesh and blood, entangled in Michael's choices. The painful resemblance lingered like an afterimage, forcing me to confront not just his deception, but the humanity on the other side. What if understanding meant more than anger? What if grappling with this truth could mend something in me, even as it broke others? Inside was a thick folder, 3 flash drives, and a sealed envelope marked with my name. My breath caught. I didn't open the folder first. I opened the letter. Michael's handwriting filled the page, firm, slanted, familiar. A little rushed, but unmistakably his. Emma, if you're reading this, it means something's happened. Maybe I'm gone. Maybe you found the drive or the files. Maybe you already know more than I ever managed to say. I don't know how much time I have, but I do know I owe you the truth. All of it. I made mistakes. I sat down, the words blurred for a moment, but I kept reading. Outside the bank, the city buzzed with midday activity, pedestrians hurrying under emerging sunbreaks, a street vendor calling out for coffee sales, the distant wail of a siren blending with traffic hum. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car outside the bank for a long time, watching the city pass me by. Somewhere nearby, a construction crew jackhammered the sidewalk. A man with a briefcase rushed past, muttering into his phone. Life moved forward, oblivious, unchanged. But I had just read a letter that split mine in two. The reluctant understanding settled slowly, like sediment in stirred water. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a recognition of his humanity. Flawed and reaching. He tried to do right by Eli without dismantling us. A tightrope walk that ultimately failed, leaving me to balance the aftermath. Driving back, the streets felt different, the familiar route now layered with introspection. Michael's plea to look after Eli lingered, a quiet imperative that softened the edges of my anger. What did protection look like? Not erasure, surely, but perhaps integration, a way to honor the boy without dishonoring our memories. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun had broken through fully, casting long shadows across the lawn. The house was quiet. Lily still at her grandmother's, her absence a hollow note in the symphony of grief. My phone buzzed with a single text from my mother-in-law. She's here. Safe. Give her space. I stared at the screen for a while, then turned it face down on the counter. That evening, I opened the folder Michael had left behind. Names, contact logs, medical records. One document detailed his petition to help Marina apply for legal residency. Another, a birth certificate with Eli's name, listing Michael as the father. I thought about that little boy, Eli, and his mother, who now carried the burden of a life built on silence. What had Michael been to them? Savior? Secret? Ghost? The details painted a fuller picture. Doctor's notes on Eli's early illnesses, School reports praising his curiosity, even a handwritten card from the boy thanking Papa Mike for a toy rocket set. It humanized them further, turning abstractions into lives intertwined with ours through Michael's choices. As night deepened, the house creaked with settling sounds, the wind picking up outside like a sigh. The shift toward understanding wasn't dramatic. No epiphany under stars, but a gradual easing, like muscles unclenching after tension. Michael's letter had bridged some gap, explaining without justifying, urging compassion where resentment might fester. I didn't know what came next. Confronting Marina, perhaps, or waiting for Lily's return. But for the first time, the path felt less like a precipice and more like a winding road, one I could navigate with reluctant grace. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn her. The drive was quiet, the radio off, the hum of tires on wet pavement my only companion. The city unfolded in familiar patterns: coffee shops with fogged windows, joggers in bright raincoats, the faint tang of salt air from the sound. When I reached the apartment complex, its peeling paint and lavender-lined garden looked less foreign in daylight, more like a place where lives were built, not just secrets kept. I parked across the street again, but this time I got out, clutching the envelope Michael had addressed to Marina, its weight grounding me as my heart raced. Standing before the door, I hesitated, the wood worn under years of knocks, each one a story I'd never know. Then I knocked, twice, firm, final. She answered on the second knock. Her eyes widened when she saw me, deep brown and weary, framed by dark hair pulled into a loose braid. For a moment, neither of us moved. "You're Emma," she said softly, her voice accented faintly, carrying a warmth that caught me off guard. I nodded. Yes. She looked behind me, as if expecting someone else, Lily perhaps, or a ghost of Michael. Her voice trembled. "Is Lily okay?" The question, so genuine, disarmed me. "She's with her grandmother," I replied. A pause hung between us, thick with unspoken histories. Then, "Would you like to come in?" Her apartment was small, tidy, and smelled faintly of lavender and something warm from the kitchen. Cinnamon, maybe, or baked bread. I sat on the edge of a worn couch, its fabric soft under my fingers, while she poured tea without asking, her hands graceful but tense. The room was alive with small details: a child's drawing pinned to the fridge, a stack of medical journals on a side table, a faded rug that spoke of years of care. Marina sat across from me, the tea steaming between us, her eyes cautious but not unkind. "I don't know what you've been told," she began carefully, "but I never meant to destroy anything." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. I slid the envelope across the table. "He left this for you." She didn't open it immediately. Her fingers traced the edge, as if absorbing whatever message lay inside through touch alone. "I loved him," she whispered, eyes glistening. "Not the way you did, not with a house and a wedding ring. But he saved us." I let the words hang in the air. I could have argued, could have corrected her, but what would have been the point? Instead, I listened as she spoke of their meeting, a desperate night at a clinic, her as a single mother with a sick infant, Michael as the lawyer who offered help beyond legal forms. A mistake born of loneliness, she called it, one that left her with Eli and Michael with a lifelong debt he chose to pay. "He never wanted to hurt you," she continued, her voice steadying. "He spoke of you and Lily with such pride, such guilt. He said you were his anchor." My throat tightened at that. The image of Michael torn between us, anchoring one family while tethering another in secret. I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through me, grounding the surreal moment. "Eli thinks his father worked far away," she said. "That he was too busy to visit much, but that he cared. I never explained the rest." I nodded, picturing the boy I'd seen yesterday, his smile so like Michael's. "And now?" she asked, voice small. "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer, only a sense that this moment was a pivot, not an end. "We figure it out," I said slowly, kindly, for the children. Her eyes widened, surprised, and for the first time a faint smile touched her lips. "You don't have to do this," she said. "No," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes, "but someone does." The words felt like a release, not of forgiveness exactly, but of intent, a choice to build something from the wreckage rather than let it bury us. We sat longer, talking in fragments about Eli's school, Lily's anger, the weight of carrying truths alone. The tea grew cold, but the room warmed with tentative understanding. When I left, the sun had broken through, casting long shadows across the garden. Marina stood at the door, the envelope still unopened in her hands, her expression a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "Thank you," she said simply, and I nodded, stepping back into the crisp air. Driving home, the city felt softer, its edges blurred by the first encounter's quiet power. The dialogue we'd begun wasn't about erasing pain, but acknowledging it, nodding to it, and choosing to move forward anyway. At home, the house was still empty, Lily's absence a lingering ache, but my mother-in-law texted, "She's talking a bit, needs time." I set the phone down, the faint hope of reconciliation flickering like a candle. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the tree outside now fully golden, its leaves trembling in the breeze. I thought of Marina's small apartment, the care in its details, and Eli's drawings, bright, hopeful things pinned where Michael might have seen them. The first encounter had shifted something in me, not erasing the betrayal, but framing it within a larger canvas of human need and flawed love. I didn't know if Lily would come home soon, or if she'd read Michael's letter, but I felt a quiet resolve to keep this fragile bridge open. For her, for Eli, for the family we might yet become. The rain started again, soft and steady, washing the world clean, and I let it lull me into a restless but hopeful sleep, the promise of tomorrow less daunting than before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't hostile, but it was cautious, like two people navigating a fragile bridge. "So," she said finally, her voice flat but not cold, "did you meet them?" I didn't look up right away, focusing on the apple's clean edges. "Yes." She stepped closer, leaning against the counter. "And?" I set the knife down, meeting her gaze. "It was complicated, but they're not monsters. Marina isn't the villain. She's just someone who made hard choices. Like your dad, like me." She let out a bitter laugh, crossing her arms. "Choices, right?" The word carried the weight of our last argument, her accusations still fresh, my digging it, her sense of betrayal. But there was less venom now, more exhaustion. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Lily, I know you're angry." Her eyes flashed. "No, I'm confused. I'm disgusted. I thought I knew who he was, Mom. He was my hero. And now I don't know if he even wanted to be my dad or if I was just the family he settled for." Her voice cracked, and the rawness in it cut me deeper than her anger had. I stepped toward her, but she didn't pull away this time. "Don't say that," I said, my voice softer than I meant. "Why not? You're thinking it too." I shook my head. "No, I'm heartbroken, but I don't think you were ever second. I think he was torn and made the worst possible decision. He hid instead of facing it." She crossed her arms tighter, jaw tight, but her eyes brimmed with tears. I reached into the drawer and pulled out Michael's letter, the original, its edges worn from my handling. I held it out, and after a long pause, she took it. "I don't need to read his excuses," she muttered, but her fingers lingered on the envelope. "They're not excuses," I said. "They're the truth he didn't have the courage to tell us while he was alive, and maybe they're the only way we move forward." She stared at the letter like it might catch fire, then walked past me to her room. The door didn't slam this time, just clicked shut, a small mercy in the quiet house. That night, I passed by her door on the way to bed. The light was still on, a faint glow seeping under the frame. I hesitated, then kept walking. Some grief isn't ready to be touched, some forgiveness can't be rushed. I didn't hear her cry, but I knew she was. And I didn't cry either. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many versions of Michael had existed. The husband who kissed my forehead, the father who taught Lily to ride a bike, the man who held another child's hand while ours waited at home. And still, I missed him. God help me, I missed him. Not just the man I thought he was, but even the flawed, selfish one I now knew. Because even in his betrayal, he'd tried to leave us something softer than rage. I folded the letter slowly, hands trembling not from fear, but from something else. A release. A quiet exhale of something I'd been holding too long. I didn't mail it right away. I placed it in an envelope, addressed it, and tucked it into the top drawer of my desk. A part of me hoped Marina would find it one day, or that Eli would, years from now, and understand that while the truth hurt us, it didn't have to ruin us. Later that afternoon, Lily came into the kitchen, her eyes tired, her voice quiet. "I read the letter," she said. I nodded, slicing another apple, the rhythm steadying me. "I don't forgive him yet." "You don't have to," I replied, But I don't hate him either, she whispered, and for the first time her voice didn't shake. We stood there side by side, the late sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust in the air like falling stars. Healing didn't look like a grand declaration. It looked like standing still and not walking away. The days that followed were tentative, marked by small gestures. Lily lingering longer at breakfast, her silence less heavy, my own heart lighter with the letter to Eli written. I didn't push her to talk about Michael's letter, but I noticed her carrying it, folded in her pocket, as if its presence was enough for now. The healing was slow, like the first green shoots after a long winter, but it was there, rooting in the quiet moments we shared, rebuilding not the past, but a future we could both inhabit. The next day, I got a message from Marina, just a photo. Eli sitting at a science fair booth, grinning beside a poster about volcanoes, clutching a tiny papier-mâché mountain, clearly handmade, clearly his. The caption read, "He got second place. He wanted you to know." I stared at it for a long time, smiling through a fresh wave of tears. Later, I showed it to Lily. She studied the image for a beat too long. "He looks like Dad," she whispered. "I know." She didn't say anything else, but she didn't look away either. We didn't try to force anything. No promises, no timelines, just space. Space to feel what we felt without apology, to mourn and grow and shift, the kind of space that slowly, gently allowed something else to take root. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but acceptance. Dinner was awkward, the clink of forks against plates loud in the quiet. We kept it simple, spaghetti and garlic bread, something comforting. Marina and I sat at the far end of the table, letting the kids find their own rhythm. Eli barely touched his food, his eyes darting around like he was mapping escape routes. Lily kept sneaking glances at him, like she was studying a puzzle that didn't quite add up. But when he mentioned he loved physics, her eyes lit up. "That's my best subject," she said. "Really?" His voice cracked slightly. "You like space stuff? Black holes, time dilation, all that?" She twirled a strand of spaghetti. "I kind of want to be an astrophysicist." Eli blinked. "That's actually really cool." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Weeks passed, then months, and gradually, what began as cautious visits became something quieter, more natural. Eli started coming by on Sundays, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to sit at the kitchen table, while Lily did her homework and I folded laundry. He brought stories from school, science facts he'd memorized, and once, a wilted sunflower he'd tried to grow on his windowsill. It had barely survived the winter light, but he was proud of it anyway. "Next time I'll try basil," he said. "I'll help you," Lily offered. He looked surprised but nodded. They didn't talk much about Michael, not directly, but his absence was there, like a shadow that no longer frightened anyone, only reminded us of where the light used to fall. Marina came sometimes too, her presence less tentative with each visit. One afternoon, she brought a tin of homemade tamales and a photo of Eli as a baby. We sat at the kitchen table, sipping cinnamon tea, while Lily asked cautious, curious questions. "He used to sleep on my chest," Marina said, smiling at the photo. "He'd curl up like a little bean, so warm I thought my heart might melt." I listened quietly, imagining Michael seeing that moment, a father in secret. Not to excuse the lies, but to accept the fullness of the man I'd loved, the flawed, divided man who'd tried, in all the wrong ways, to do right by everyone. That spring, Lily suggested she and Eli present a joint science project at the community fair. They built a model of the solar system, painting each planet by hand, rigging tiny LED lights to mimic orbit paths. When they showed it off under the auditorium lights, I stood beside Marina in the back row, our hands brushing by accident. We didn't move them away. Afterward, Eli ran down the aisle, red ribbon in hand. "Second place again," he groaned. Lily trailed behind, cheeks flushed with pride. "No one noticed you messed up Jupiter's rotation speed," she said. "You were great." He grinned, and I saw something new. Not just Michael's echo, but a light all his own. The connections forged weren't perfect, but they were real, built on small moments that stitched us together. Sunday dinners became a ritual, the table crowded with plates and laughter, Eli's science facts blending with Lily's quips about black holes. Marina shared stories of her childhood, her voice lighter with each visit. And I found myself looking forward to her tamales, her quiet strength. We were not a family in the traditional sense, but something new. born from fracture, held together by choice. The seasons turned, and the house no longer felt like a mausoleum. The leaves outside fell, then bloomed again, and with them our lives reshaped, slowly, gently, into something we could all inhabit. We didn't erase Michael's mistakes, but we built around them, making space for Eli's curiosity, Lily's healing, Marina's resilience, and my own tentative hope. The porch light stayed on a little longer each night, a beacon for this unlikely family we were forging, one awkward, honest moment at a time.